Kevin O'Connell signs a multi-year contract. He's here to stay. Hope you didn't think there was going to be an issue with that. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today on the show, we got some news. Kevin O'Connell signs a big, long extension. Multi-year. I still don't actually know the terms of it. We'll get that to you when we can. But he had, and if there was any worry about his contract, which there shouldn't have been, that has been quelled. Also, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah now in talks for a similar extension. They're doing him next, and so that probably gets done pretty quick, seeing how the Kevin O'Connell one got done. But really, what I was going to do all day, that'll be quick. We'll have a lot of time to talk about the Vikings' needs. I want to put together a shopping list. The shopping list for the Vikings is long, and they've got a lot of money, less draft picks, and we can sort of engage with some of the questions like, how many cornerbacks do we need? Do we count Mekhi Blackmon as a guy we expect to start? Like those kinds of questions are going to be what comes up here. And so we can hammer all of that out. But first, let's do the news. So Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores seem like they're coming back. We are not 100% out of the woods yet on Brian Flores. I'll get to that in a second. But as reported by Schefter and Rappaport and all the local beat people, the Vikings have reached a deal with Kevin O'Connell. The Vikings announced on Tuesday it's a multi-year deal. I don't know what he's making. I don't know what the length is. That all information has yet to be reported as of this recording, but he's chilling. And when it comes to the coach's contract, it's pretty rare that it ever is like core to the issue, because coaches' contracts don't count against the salary cap, and because they are relatively small. The highest paid coach in the league is Andy Reid at $20 million a year. There are tons of players in the league that like make more than that, and it doesn't count toward the salary cap. So unless you, as I've been saying, unless you have a very, very cheap owner, the money there is not going to be an issue, and holding on to purse strings is not really going to be an issue. If you want that guy to keep coaching, he will keep coaching. There do occasionally come situations like with Mike McCarthy in Dallas where they just let the contract expire, but those are like hot seat situations, right? Like Mike McCarthy entered the season kind of on the hot seat after not being able to make it happen in the playoffs and having this disaster year. That it was a lot of injuries, and I don't know if it's necessarily fair, but whatever. You can listen to Locked On Cowboys for opinions on that, and Brian Schottenheimer, whatever's going on over there. But that was like a clear hot seat situation. And when the coach is doing well, or I'll be like, I think the argument for not extending Kevin O'Connell, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because for one, there's no opportunity cost. The Wilfs are spending money that they otherwise would have, put into a hedge fund. Like, who cares? That is not affecting the Vikings one way or another to save that money. So that part I never really quite got. But it also, I think it stemmed from like people saying, well, he can't win in the playoffs. Maybe he's good, but not good enough, right? And good, but not good enough doesn't get you fired in the league. It gets you, hey, let's see if you can be a little better next time. And you continue to get chances until, it's been a decade, and then suddenly patience starts to wear a little bit thin. But, you make the playoffs, you ain't getting fired outside of some pretty rare exceptions. So I don't think a lot of people were like asking for that or anything like that. There were, of course, I would call them unsubstantiated reports of like tension in the organization. This is mostly a Florio thing. You know how I feel about him and his reporting, and especially when it doesn't line up with what the local beat is saying. I'll paraphrase Matt Collar, who is directly stands in the way of this. who said it's as easy as an unfollow button. And then suddenly you can find yourself a lot more informed. I'm not going to go super hard into that this time, but what I will say is I don't think that the reports of the tension in the organization were true, or I don't think that they were in spirit true. Maybe someone had a terse conversation one afternoon before everything was fine 2 hours later. Maybe, but clearly it didn't affect things because the contract got signed 8 days after the season ended. So it's pretty quick to hammer out a contract with a head coach, and the GM is up next. So I don't think that there's any issues with the Vikings currently looking at this build of the Vikings. Like the Wilfs are looking at Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and saying, yep, more of that, please. Just like everybody sensible knew that they would. But if you're good enough to make the playoffs, you're good enough to get a contract extension. And if the Wilfs want to fire him next year because they go 3-14 and everybody get out because they get so frustrated with not having an O-line or whatever it is you're mad about, if they suddenly decide that they agree with you, they can fire him. Being under contract doesn't stop them from doing that. So there's no reason not to do it. And it was really, I felt like I was going insane with how many people decided to not believe that this like very routine thing would happen. But okay, enough of that. All right, let's go into the actual situation that this newly extended head coach finds himself in, or the soon to be extended GM finds himself in. And that is looking to repair a roster that's going to lose the most snaps in the league. The most. Part of that is that Darrisaw only played half the season, so you're going to get some of those back from Cam Robinson, but you're losing your starting quarterback right now. You're losing your starting running back. You're losing so many starters on defense in the secondary and all. Like, there's a lot of people that are slated to leave. And it is now up to this regime to replace them. So when I talk about draft needs, or offseason needs, I should probably say more like, I am not counting players that are slated to leave that I even think are likely to be back, like restricted free agents like Ryan Wright, right? Super easy to bring those guys back, or someone like Jalen Redmond, right? Super easy to bring those guys back, but you got to do it. So it's a need until they've actually made the transaction. And it's a need that they can choose to fill a number of ways. They can bring Ryan Wright back as a restricted free agent. They can let him go and bring in an undrafted free agent. Whatever it is, it's a whole, and it's a decision that they have to make. So it's a shopping list. It's a list of decisions that need to be made. And some of these shopping list items can be crossed off by bringing back guys that are slated to hit free agency. The first one is a quarterback. The Vikings need a quarterback. J.J. McCarthy is looking like he should be the starting quarterback next year, or at least be given every opportunity to win that job. But that's the only guy under contract right now. And part of the reason I'm doing this episode, by the way, is I hate to admit this, but I've seen mock drafts. I don't want to talk about it in January, okay? But they've come across, against my will, they've come across my consciousness. And a lot of people are like, the Vikings need a tackle because they needed O-line help because they gave up 9 sacks in the playoff game. And it's like, that's not Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw are going to be the tackles, okay? That's non-negotiable. The interior help, yeah. So if you want to mock a guard to the Vikings at 24, by all means, I got a couple names I even like for that, but not a tackle. If you're mocking a tackle to the Vikings and not saying, and then he's going to move into guard, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. I don't even feel like being nice to you. Pay attention. But they need a quarterback. That quarterback could be Daniel Jones. He could be Sam Darnold. Could be Nick Mullins as a truer backup if you really think J.J. McCarthy is going to take this job uncontested. I doubt that the Vikings just let J.J. McCarthy take it uncontested. I don't think that that's their intention. Make him beat somebody. I think that's healthy. Even if you think, well, yeah, I mean, they traded up for him. They drafted him 10th overall. You're telling me he can't be a starter by year 2? Well, he was injured for all of year 1, so chill out on that and on those expectations. No. Yeah, no, I think it's perfectly reasonable. I actually think it's unreasonable to just assume that he's going to walk in and be the starter and give him no competition. I think that's actually kind of bad strategy. I don't care about what he could have been first overall, and I would still be saying this. So yes, I'll bite that bullet for you. If it's not Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold, I kind of think it's got to be a bust. Give me somebody that went through a bad couple of years when they were young and made mistakes that can, like, I don't know, somebody like Marcus Mariota, right? Like guys that have been through some adversity in their careers, have seen a little bit of stuff, and can then be that veteran mentor while still being like a quarterback with enough experience in the NFL that you go, oh yeah, this guy like knows how to run stick. Like he can exist in a scheme. And if JJ McCarthy is hurt or is a total train wreck, they'll be able to give you something that doesn't embarrass you. That's quarterback. But boy, the list of needs goes on. We'll keep talking about it next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Look, it's conference championship season, and I don't know about you, I have very little personal stake in the conference championship. Maybe you're rooting for the Bills, maybe you don't like the Eagles for whatever reason, and you're rooting for like Jaden Daniels or whatever, but and a lot of Vikings fans, real big fans of the Commanders. They took the Lions out, but for me, I've got my like national opinions on those teams, but I don't have the same like stake. That's what FanDuel can give to me. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. And right now, new customers can bet $5 on anything, no matter how short the odds, and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you can get started with $300 in bonus bets. That is at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. I should hopefully have some draft stuff up soon on my Patreon page, patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. I would love it if you came and joined, or if you want to watch any of the breakdowns that I did all season long. If you got questions about what about Dalton Reisner, how did Dallas Turner do, did Jordan Addison take a step forward, all of that. I've got tons of content over there, so go check it out. It's all free to watch. Let's move on here with this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, talking about the needs of that the Vikings are entering the offseason with. And the next big one is running back. That's another room that's just barren. There's like Ty Chandler, and I think that's literally it. So there's nobody even under contract, let alone people we feel good about. Now, I think you need 2 running backs, just like you need to bring in 3 quarterbacks. The Vikings will need to acquire 3 quarterbacks this offseason just to fill out camp. 2 of those guys could be undrafted rookies, but you probably don't want to fill out your entire roster with undrafted rookies. So that's something, and it's the same thing with running back. They probably need to acquire 4 new running backs just to fill out camp. They usually enter camp with 5 running backs and CJ Ham. So they've got Ty. That's 1. I think Dwayne McBride's not even in the org anymore. So that's it. You can bring back Aaron Jones. You can bring back Cam Akers. I'm in favor of both of those things. There are guys worth drafting. The compensatory pick that they are scheduled to get from Kirk Cousins, which is the first pick of the compensatories. I think it's pick like 97. That seems like a good place to target a running back to me in this draft class. There's a lot of those kind of late day 2, early day 3 type guys. There should be some meat available there. So bring in that rookie, maybe go get that veteran you like, Ty Chandler, maybe somebody for him to compete with for a roster spot. Like there's just so many guys. Like I talked about with the departing free agent episode, I'm fine with bringing back guys like Aaron Jones and Cam Akers on similar deals to what they were playing with now. If they get really expensive, we can probably let it go, but I doubt that happens. And there are some names on the running back free agent market, but honestly, I'm not too stoked on a whole bunch of them. And I think bringing in a rookie with a little juice, if you can get your hands on one, is, I think, the most cost-efficient way to do this, because I don't think that the cost of that rookie is going to be extraordinarily high. You can even trade back from that compensatory pick, go into the 4th round, and still probably have somebody you're pretty excited about on the board. Obviously, fullback, we're good. Wide receiver, we're good. Jefferson, Addison, Naylor, probably running back those 3 again. If you want to, you got to get your Brandon Powell replacement or bring him back or do whatever, but we're not talking about depth needs right now. Tight end, they're pretty set. Hawkinson and Oliver, maybe they get a new tight end 3 with Johnny Munt departing, but whatever. O-line. So what kind of need does O-line represent? There are 2, maybe 3, but right now, as it stands, in terms of returning on purpose week 18 starters, right? No Cam Robinson, and Christian Darrisaw, his start of the season is in question. Dalton Reisner, who was starting, slated to leave, so you're either rolling with Ed Ingram, but considering that they benched him, I kind of doubt that they want to do that. So I think saying right guard is a need is like an offseason need, probably accurate to do. I would be pretty surprised if they just passively rolled with Ed Ingram. It's not impossible that Ingram ends up being the starter, but I would be surprised if that happened without them trying something else, drafting a rookie that's supposed to compete with him or bringing in a free agent that's supposed to compete with him. Like, he's got to beat somebody, and if he can take the job in camp, then good for him. And then I think it's the same thing with Blake Brandel. I don't know how excited the Vikings were with Blake Brandel. I think he played worse guard than Ed Ingram, to be honest, and especially down the stretch, things really started to fall apart for him. I don't know if they're going for another season of that, but maybe they are. So I'm not going to put Blake Brandel down as like left guard as a need right now because he didn't actively get benched. Like there was no concrete thing that happened. By all accounts, we could go into that room and ask people how they feel about Blake Brandel, and they could be like, "Yeah, he's good enough for us." And there's really nothing from the outside that we can tell that tells us that that's not true. So I'm not going to put it down as a need right now. If you want to upgrade on him, if you think it's worth it, sure, bring in a free agent. I would love it. Sure, fine. But he's under contract and he started all year. So there are rooms with like literally nobody in the room right now that they probably have to focus their resources on first. And then you've got the Christian Darrisaw thing. Is he going to start week 1? And if not, who is? Are we rolling a David Quessenberry out there? He's not even under contract either. Walter Rouse? He was a healthy scratch for most of the year. So I don't know what they plan to do there, but having a sensible backup swing tackle is a need that I would put on the list of needs, even though it's probably mostly a depth need. He's going to have to start a couple of weeks, probably. And depending on how rehab goes, he could start for months. That's a player you need to have in the building unless you have a very accurate sense for where Christian Darrisaw is at his rehab, like in March, which you probably aren't going to have. I mean, you get a long, long, long road to go, and you need to be prepared for that possibility. So, like, that's a need. That's a person that's going to be starting for your team. You need to at least prepare like you will be. So, two needs on the O-line is all that I'm calculating that out to, tallying that out to. On the D-line, and I'm talking interior D-line, the Harrison Phillipses of the world. He's still there. If you want to try to improve on him, go ahead. But also, Jonathan Bullard, Jerry Tillery, and Jalen Redmond all scheduled to hit free agency. Redmond, if you want to call him a starter, if the Vikings want to put him in as a starter next year, I wouldn't be crazy shocked about that, considering how he ascended through the roster this year. And I just kind of liked how he played. But I think Bullard is one of those guys that I really, really, really want to see come back. Tillery, I'm a little bit more lukewarm about, but like someone has to take that job. You've got to have your 3 interior D linemen in base packages, and right now only one of them's under contract. So that's 2 needs right there. Even if they feel like 2 that could be kind of easy, like you could run back that same group, but you got to go click the button. Obviously, there's no needs on the edge, no needs at linebacker. Like if you ever see a mock draft that like gives the Vikings like an off-ball linebacker and like an edge rusher, they just weren't watching the Vikings. That person just doesn't know anything about the Vikings, which like whatever. Like I don't know. That's maybe you didn't watch them on TV. I'm not the cops. You're not required to do that, but you probably should if you're like a national person. The hardest thing to navigate this March is going to be the secondary, because I don't know if you're going to just throw a lot of draft picks at that. You got to figure out the secondary. I think a lot of money goes toward that. So we'll talk about that next, as well as some updates on Brian Flores. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. If you want to grow your small business in 2025, it's going to come down to hiring. It always does. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. They have the strongest hiring data available to help you identify the right candidates and give you the confidence you need to make the best decisions for your business. look, when you work for a small business, if you own a small business, or even if you work HR for a larger firm, you're doing a whole bunch of different things. You cannot just sit there and scan through resumes all day. You definitely don't have time for that. So from unique skills and interests to the connections that you share, LinkedIn will help you find the right person to the job. And in fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high quality candidates. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Moving onward with this Locked On Vikings episode. We'll get to the secondary in a second, but I did tell you that I was going to talk about Brian Flores' update. Here's where I'm at on where Brian Flores will end up next year. He was scheduled for formal interviews with 3 teams, or I think he did all 3 teams' interviews. He interviewed with the Jets, the Jaguars, and the Bears. The Bears have hired Ben Johnson. They're out of the running. The Jets seem to be very close to hiring Aaron Glenn, and the Jags seem to be very close to hiring Liam Cohen. The Jaguars are a little bit more nebulous, a little bit less official, where he's like, quote unquote, emerging as a favorite per the Tampa Bay Times, at least. That one I'm a little bit less confident in. We still have to look at, like, there's still things could happen, but the Jaguars have moved a whole bunch of different candidates onto second interviews, and Brian Flores wasn't on that list. So if it's not Liam Cohen and it ends up being someone else, okay, probably not going to be Flores. Sounds like they've kind of said no to that. That leaves the Jets, and the Jets situation is getting a little murky. On Tuesday, it was reported that Aaron Glenn was going to be there for a second interview with the Jets. He's their front runner. He's their guy. The Jets want him. They offered him a contract, and they thought they were going to basically not let him out of the building without a contract. But he did leave the building without a contract. He understands the offer. He knows what it is, and it sounds like he likes it, and everybody's still pretty much ready for him to go. The Lions have pretty much started, making their preparations for losing him. Like, it seems like it's everything but official. However, seems like he's going down to New Orleans to do his interview there. And because of weather, they've got to wait, but that we're kind of waiting for that. And he's going to do it. So Aaron Glenn could choose New Orleans instead. Either way, it sounds like he is going to take a head coaching job. We're just seeing which. He's the belle of the ball right now with Ben Johnson out. He's the other Lions coordinator, right? So whatever happens there, we are watching it like a little bit, still not very much, because in terms of who got second interviews, again, Flores not on the list. And the Jets called around and said, hey, we're going with Aaron Glenn. Thanks for everything. They told all their other candidates, don't wait on us. We're going with Aaron Glenn. So if Aaron Glenn does leave them at the altar, it gets really awkward to call people back. And I don't know, knowing Brian Flores and his relationship to this process, I wouldn't be surprised if that runaround kind of gets him to say, you know what, screw you guys, even if the Jets come back a calling. But it seems to me like we are on the cusp of, okay, Brian Flores will be back. I'm going to word it really carefully in the title and say something like, Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores likely to be back for another stint or something like that. Because it's very not quite. But I'll keep you posted on how these things go when they all officialize. There's still the Cowboys. They're doing weird stuff with Deion Sanders and Brian Schottenheimer. I don't know what that's about, but I guess they could still reach out to Brian Flores at the last hour if you really thought you wanted them to. The Raiders, I think, still technically could, although they're getting pretty deep in their hiring process, so I'm not seeing it coming. It feels likely, but not confirmed. We're up 2 scores in the late fourth quarter, okay? An onside kick could happen, but that's kind of where we're at. Anyways, let's continue on with this thing about the Vikings' needs, and now we go to the secondary. Look, under contract, if the Vikings had to play a game tomorrow with who is under contract for the 2025 season, CB1 would be Mekhi Blackman, and the first safety would be Josh Metellus. That's it. Those are Theo Jackson, and then Dwight McGlothern. Those are your names, right? And those guys have been backups and probably should stay backups. So you need to answer the question on safety. Promote Theo Jackson to starter could be an answer. If they wanted to try to sell us on that answer, all right, I'll hear you out. But I don't That's not the status quo as it stands right now until we're like informed otherwise. So what do you do at corner? Well, you need Mekhi Blackmon is inside outside, right? So even if you do let Byron Murphy go, Mekhi Blackmon becomes the new Byron Murphy. He plays inside, he plays outside, you move him around, and then it kind of allows you the flexibility to get an outside guy if that's the best guy available. If you draft an inside guy, if he's the guy you want to draft, and you can work with that. But that's at least two needs. I'm saying there's three starting cornerback jobs, right? Byron Murphy, Stephon Gilmore, and Shaq Griffin. You bring back Byron Murphy, you bring back Shaq Griffin, you go with Mekhi Blackmon. That could be their plan. Or it could be bringing back all the guys. And, now Mekhi Blackmon is depth in a group that, we're probably pretty glad we didn't have to see more of the depth corners this year. They stayed pretty healthy, and that's nice because, Fabian Moreau acquitted himself okay in that one game against the Cardinals. But, we've had seasons where we've gotten down to like nobodies, right? And it would have been not that long. It would have like one more injury and you're getting down to the undrafted rookies, right? So there's two corners that need to come in. And if you don't respect Mekhi Blackmon as a starter, as a guy who had one up and down rookie season and now is coming off an ACL, and you say, well, maybe we shouldn't give that guy a starting job. Fair enough. Then you need three. So two or three. I'm going to call it two and be nice to Mekhi Blackmon. I'll be charitable here in January. And then at safety, you got to replace Cam Bynum or re-sign him. You got to replace Harrison Smith or re-sign him. I should mention Harrison Smith's contract has been a subject of some debate because the two cap websites say it differently, whether he's a free agent or not. So here's how I think it works. On March 16th, he has a void option. His contract will void on March 16th. So I think what it is if nobody pushes any buttons, he becomes a free agent. But that option is different than the contract automatically voiding. There's an actual prompt that I think the Vikings have to actively say no to, which Spotrac is listing as then if the Vikings stay passive, they'll cut him. I think it's just an argument of semantics. And it is a sort of, I think that provision is in there to structure the contract with some kind of prediction that Harrison Smith is going to retire right now. And then you put that void in there so that the contract's structure is planning for that. And if he doesn't retire and, plays out another year, then you work with that and whatever salary happens. But as it stands right now, I expect Harrison Smith to either retire or become a free agent. That's where the status quo is for me until we are otherwise informed. And I'm not reporting anything on that, by the way. I'm not saying anything that is supposed to be insider information. Okay, I don't have that. That's just what the situation is looking at right now until somebody does something about it. Obviously, Cam Bynum hitting the market as well. I got a lot of flack for, I should address this. Last week, I did a thing about the unrestricted free agents leaving the Vikings, and I gave contract numbers for both Byron Murphy and Cam Bynum that were probably too high. So I was going off of what the market rate is for one of these players, right? A 27-year-old corner in Byron Murphy that got 8 interceptions and made the Pro Bowl. I'm sorry. I don't care what you think about him as being a slot or he's too small or whatever. That dude's getting paid market rate. That is PFF has him at 17 mil. I think that's unbelievably stealing. Market rate would be, if you want to shave a little bit more off of it, I think I said Pat Surtain money. If you think that's too much, fair enough. Something a little bit more sensible would be 22 mil. It's about 8% of the cap. Corners make 8% of the cap. For decades and decades, corners have made about 8% of the cap when they're good starting corners. If you are a Pro Bowl corner who was third in the league in interceptions, and you're 27 years old, you're making 8% of the cap. If you don't like it, let him walk. Same deal with Cam Bynum. I probably went a little bit too high. I said Buda Baker money. Maybe it's something more that I went with 20. Okay, 18, 17, something like that. But he's going to make a market rate extension. He is coming off of his rookie deal. He's been a good player. He is a starting quality player. If he hits the market, somebody's going to pay him. He's going to get market rate. That's economics. That has nothing to do with your opinion of those players. It's just that it's not about, this is something you have to understand about contracts. It is not a reflection. Like if somebody gets paid, if guy A gets paid more than guy B, that is not a reflection that the league says guy A is better than guy B. And that's the like natural way we want to process that. And you have to get that out of your head. It's about who got paid last. That's all it is. It is not who's better. It's who got paid first and who got paid last. Whoever got paid last is going to get paid more. It's just how it works with a cap that constantly increases. When there's more money to go around, guys signing in later years are going to get more money. The pie keeps getting bigger and you're going to get a bigger piece of pie. It's just math. So when I say a number and you disagree with it, understand I'm talking about economics, not necessarily, hey, this guy is exactly as good as Pat Surtain. No, I don't think that. And if you have misconstrued me for saying that, my bad. But it's market rate, dude. Like, Pro Bowl corner's going to get paid, man. I don't know what to tell you. If you don't think Pro Bowl corner's going to get paid, I hope the sand that your head is in tastes good. I don't know. But whatever it is, for those counting at home, not counting Mekhi Blackmon as a need. So only 2 needs at corner. That's 10. That's a shopping list of 10. And it's 10 like valuable players, like players that will cost some money. It won't be a lot, like Jonathan Bullard or running back. It won't be a ton. Some will be more, like a corner or a safety or a quarterback. But all that money that they have, 67, 70 million, depending on how you count stuff, is going to go to a lot of that. And obviously money in future years is earmarked for those extensions, for, say, a Jordan Addison extension, which that'll be a talking point next offseason. And so all that planning goes into it as well. The shopping list is long. There's a lot of work to do. There are a lot of decisions to make. So I hope I'm priming you well enough for that. God, I want to do some X's and O's stuff, but I'm not quite sure what. We'll figure something out. Talk to you tomorrow. Love you. And as always, Skull.